Smith.
There you go. Sorry. Can you hear me out there? Okay, great. This talk is dedicated to my mom, and this whole endeavor for me is dedicated to my mom. My mom and I went to college together, and many of you might have heard this at ABBA, but we happened to go to college together, and she made it there about a semester before I did. And we both wanted to take psychology. We were at St. Cloud State University, and she chose the humanistic track. And I thought, well, I want to be a counselor. I want to, go where mom's going. And she said, mm-mm. She said, I'm going to be in these classes alone. I'm going to shine in college alone. It was the 70s, the time for women to be really independent and do what they wanted. I'm like, what am I going to do? And she said, I think there's a behavioral track over there. That might interest you. So mom and I would get together every night and kind of share our learnings. College was just wonderful. We actually lived together, too. So we'd share our learnings, and I could never understand what she was talking about. She had things like triggering, where people were rebirthed, and that was how they overcame, a lot of current problems. And then I'd show her pigeons pecking, because I was, running the lab at that time, and we both just sit there and look at each other like we had 4 eyes. And so, and I never did get to the point, even after I started my company and, all sorts of things started happening for us in terms of application in business, I never got to the point where mom understood what it is that I do. And so, mom, this is dedicated to you. It might be a little too late, but at some point I hope you know what's going on here. So how many here have had trouble explaining what it is that you do to even people you love, right? They're like, okay, hope you have a job and that it pays. So here's one thing that's frustrating to me is I've got a global consulting company in business, and I can work with someone for 5 or 6 or 7 years, and at the end of it, they still don't know what it is exactly that we do. And it just blows me away. So I have one guy, I've worked with him for 6 or 7 years. He's now the CEO of a global pharmaceutical company. I happened to open the New York Times last year, right before Christmas, and I got a wonderful Christmas gift. He had been the CEO for about a year. He'd been very successful. And they started doing a lot of interviews and things like that. And they said, what are your big leadership learnings? And he said, I've had 2. And he said, one was, I learned that behavior can be a root cause of some of our issues in our organization. And I work closely with a psychologist and her team, and she taught me that. So he calls me back a couple months ago. He's got some issues in his manufacturing sites. And he goes, I need some of that culture behavior stuff. Like, oh no, are you kidding me? So anyway, so it's not just for mom, it's for leaders like him, because it's easier to see when you're on the front line, like the behavioral safety sorts of pieces. People can see those behaviors, but as you start to move up, they're like, what should I be looking for? What should I be monitoring? What should I be doing to help this along? And they become disconnected from that. So we're trying to rejigger all this and get it out there in a way that might compete, because nothing fries my more than when I also have a leader send me an email that says, have you seen this new guy in behavior? Like BJ Fogg is a guy who's claiming to be a Stanford professor. It's since found out that he's not. But he's got a whole bunch of things going with respect to behavior. And he's got a real nice, neat little model that they all remember. And so I get this little email that says, it seems like he's doing some really advanced stuff. And so what we're going to do is we're going to try to overcome that. Now, how many came here because you saw this Behavior 3.0, the skinny on the new fat science? Okay, great. That means nothing. It was just to get you here. Okay? That's all part of marketing. There you go. There you go. Fat is, I guess it's cool. So this is all about making our science cool. So that's one of the things that that we're trying to do. And I'll explain to you the journey that we've been on. So as you all know, we have a brand around behavior analysis, whether we put it there or not. So the issue for, in this era now is how do you control your brand? And what do you do purposely around that? And we're even talking about people branding themselves, given the internet and how you're out there. So one of the things we did is we started, Heather, I think about 1.5 years ago maybe, down at Florida. And I said, we asked the folks there in that session, it's about as many people who are attending here, we got them into groups like what you were talking about and said, what's our current brand and what's our desired brand? kind of shocked me because there were a lot of people in autism at that conference, and I thought, what other place do we have where we have such evidence-based, approaches, acceptance by insurance companies, state legislatures, parents, teachers, everybody acknowledges and accepts our approach. I thought, these folks will really be able to say, we've got a really solid brand. So the bulk of the audience was from autism, I'd say maybe 20% from OBM. But here's what they came up with. They said in their market, these are the things that they hear about, what we do. And I think it's kind of all tied back to behaviorism. When they first start with a parent, even though they know what it is that they need to purchase, somebody who's certified as a behavior analyst, they still don't know what that is. So once they start to hear, they said they start in with, oh my God, this is behaviorism? Behaviorism is dead. They go through, it's too time intensive, it's manipulative, it doesn't, account for all the complexity of human behavior and things like that. I see a lot of heads nodding. So we all know that this is an issue. We talked about what we wanted in terms of the improved aspect of it. I thought they just did a wonderful job to say, this is aspirational. This is how we want people to view us. We don't want them going to BJ Fogg's site and saying, we can get all those things over here in the desired state. We want them coming to us. That means that we have to rebrand what we do. And so what we did is we also asked them at the time to do a baseline assessment of typical things you would look at for your brand strength. So as you can see, even with this audience where their market knows them well and knows that they produce results, the awareness of behavior analysis is poor. Emotional connection to us, how do people feel when they hear about us? I mean, think about how you feel when you hear about Disney, right? You get an immediate emotional connection. They're saying we don't have that. Distinction from other sorts of services that are out there. So how distinctive are we, and can people point to the differentiating features? They said that's low too. Credibility and trust is fair, because that audience, they clearly get evidence-based results. And the purchase motivation is fair because of everything that's been set up from a reimbursement standpoint. Okay, so we've got somewhat of a baseline level. Now, I know within OBM, the recognition is even lower. It's very, very difficult to help a leader understand how behavior analysis fits into the day-to-day things that they do, let alone managing the business. Okay, so the next thing is we said, well, what are we going to do? So I'm on the Cambridge Center for Behavioral Studies board. I hadn't been to ABBA myself in 17 years, because once I got a family, I decided I really kind of liked that weekend. So I said, well, I need to re-engage, and we need to do something about this, because we are getting more and more competitors who are able to talk about behavior in a sexy, fun way, in a way that we're not able to. So unless we do something about this, we're going to lose what we have in terms of the ability to attract in new students, the ability to create the markets that will then hire those students, and the ability to really thrive as a science. So one of the things we did then is we started going to some of these different sessions and said, what's our path forward? Well, I don't know anything about branding. I know about behavior analysis, and I saw us struggle. CLG is my company. I saw us struggle around our brand, and I thought, oh, this is too subjective. This is really difficult to do. So we actually brought in some experts to help on the brand for behavior analysis. And so one of the experts we had was a guy named Grant McCracken. And Grant's got a very particular area of expertise, and it's around the cultural aspects of branding. So what might have been a good brand in the 50s will no longer play in the 90s, 2000s, let alone right now. So you think about, what is it, Chrysler's ad? They had no longer your grandfather's Chrysler. Because they knew in people's mind, Chrysler was seen as an old, stodgy type of big car that you drove around the whole family, or no longer your father's Chrysler. So people have to update their brands every so often based on the culture. So Grant came in to a Board of Trustees meeting to the Cambridge Center for Behavioral Studies, which was great that they even wanted to do it, because a year prior to that they said, no, there's nothing wrong with the science, and we just need to keep showing results. And There's nothing that we can do from a marketing perspective that's going to, change things. We just have to show results. So anyway, finally got Grant in there. And Grant was the most bizarre looking and behaving person you could ever imagine. I mean, he was one of those zany sort of, professors you'd imagine is at Yale or Stanford. And he paced around like an animal that was caged and sometimes lost his microphone. And I just thought, oh my God, as he was talking, I thought, I'm going to lose all my credibility because he was... But he told us some wonderful, wonderful things that just kind of broke the whole thing open. So no, that's not Grant on the side. You know Malcolm Gladwell? You guys know him from Tipping Point, a couple of other books. Okay. So what he did is he went through the evolution of a brand according to different points in time, in different cultures. And then he helped us become very deeply aware of where our culture is right now and why behavior analysis, the way we talk about it, is out of sync with the culture. Okay? So some critical things, and when I first heard them, I thought, I don't believe this. But it gave me a little bit different lens to start looking at things and saying, okay, this is why we're out of sync. So one of the key things is we are overwhelmed by information and complexity. Okay? And we will pay for people to cut through all that junk and give us the 5 steps to do X. We don't care if that, and also, because we can go on the internet, we might see what the 5 steps are that one person pulled together. We can go somewhere else and we can see another slightly different 5 steps and we say, oh, that makes sense too. I'm going to cobble together step 2, 4, 6, and I'll come up with my own thing, right? But it's helpful. So we don't think there's a single solution to any problem. Think about it in terms of, my mother-in-law just got diagnosed with breast cancer. She completely and totally trusted her physician. She's 78 years old, did exactly what she was told, never once went on the internet to look at anything. Okay? Those days are gone, right? We're all sitting there, I'd ask 5 friends, you'd be out there, you'd be in some sort of discussion group, you'd try to figure out, you'd go everywhere. You'd go to holistic medicine, you'd go to Eastern medicine, you'd do, you'd scan everything. So the doctor would be one source of information, and that's not happening anymore. People no longer take the expert's word as gospel, which just goes right along with what I'm talking about. They want to co-create things with them. They want to get on the blog with the expert and help the expert understand what else needs to be done. They like thought leaders who can take this massive amount of data and get it down to the essence, and they don't like science. That's the one that scared me, because what do we lead with? Science. It's a proven approach, right? It's got all these different sort of things, and boy, if we could add a lot of formulas, we'd do that too. But they don't like science. They don't think that necessarily adds legitimacy. The fact is, you can get too far out on the hardcore sciences and forget some of the other things. Think about physicians and us looking for alternative, medicine. People love stories. They don't want to hear about the data. They want to hear about the N of 1 and what happened, right? They want to hear about that one person where they had hope, and this is what happened. So maybe I'll follow that person's path. The other thing is they like self-management and self-learning. So put me in control. Put me in the driver's seat. I'll help figure out, what the context is for me and how that will work. So does this resonate with you in terms of things you see? Yeah. Now, if I showed this to my mother-in-law, I love her dearly. I just absolutely love her to death. She'd go, you people. I mean, you young kids. So now here's the people who have excelled at pulling this together. I see some of your heads nodding. There's a company called Change Anything, and I've spoken with them. They're really a fascinating company. They said, we used to do what you do. And I said, what's that? And they said, behavior analysis in business. I couldn't believe it. And I said, really? And I said, well, why aren't you doing it anymore? And they said, well, we figured out a way to package it. They said, doing behavior analysis in business the way you're doing it was like setting a smorgasbord every day, holding a banquet. They said, we figured out that people just want to eat out of vending machines and we're making more money. Okay. So they've got a great website if you want to go there and take a look at how to package something It makes behavior change look easy and fun, and you can connect with others, and you could be successful. And we've got straightforward little things that you can look at. They focus a lot, though, on the thought side, change your thinking, change your behavior. But you'll also see a lot of behavior analysis built in. Same company did influencers. There's another one that I wanted to drop in, and I'll show you later, but it's called The Power of Habit. The Power of Habit is written by a guy who got his MBA at Harvard and an advanced degree, I don't know what that is, in history at Yale. So, and he's now a behavior change expert. And we're going to see a little bit of how he promotes himself. Switch is another one, how do we turn habits and behaviors on and off? And then finally Drive. Everybody, I don't know if you've seen that one, but it's a rehash of Alfie Kahn around, they literally, stuff like this just blows me away. People who work at manufacturing kind of piecemeal types of jobs, they work for money. People who have higher intellectual-oriented sort of jobs, where they're problem solving and things like that, they work for the sheer joy of work and problem solving. So we told that to our consultants and withdrew their pay and said that you should just enjoy it. It didn't work. Okay, so let me show you something around how they're packaging it and why it is difficult, but not impossible, that we can compete with them.
Imagine for a moment that you have a habit that you really want to change. Let's say, for instance, you go up to the cafeteria every afternoon and you eat a chocolate chip cookie. This habit has caused you to gain a little bit of weight. In fact, this habit has caused you to gain exactly 8 pounds, and your wife has started making some pointed comments. And when I say you, what I really mean is me, because this is a habit that I had that I just couldn't kick. To understand why that habit was so powerful, and what it would take to change it, I had to learn how habits work. Every habit functions the same way. At first, there's a cue, some type of trigger that makes the behavior unfold automatically. Studies tell us that a cue can be a location, a time of day, a certain emotional state, other people, or just a pattern of behaviors that consistently triggers a certain routine. To figure out the cue for my craving, I spent a few days tracking exactly when the urge to eat a cookie hit. And what I noticed pretty soon was something interesting. The cookie craving always hit about between 3 o'clock and 3:30 in the afternoon. That was my cue. It was a certain time of day. The next part in the habit loop is the routine, the behavior itself. And for me, that was pretty easy to figure out. Every day between 3 and 3:30, I'd get this craving for a cookie. I'd get up out of my chair. I'd walk over to the elevator. I'd take the elevator up to the 14th floor. I'd get out, I'd buy a cookie, and then I would eat it while talking to my colleagues in the cafeteria. The last part of the habit loop is the reward. And in some respects, the reward is the most important part, because that's why habits exist, so that we can get the rewards that we want. But figuring out a reward is kind of tricky. To figure out what reward was driving my habit, I did a little bit of an experiment. One day when the cookie urge struck, instead of going up to the cafeteria, I went outside and I took a walk around the block. Then the next day, I went up to the cafeteria, but instead of buying a cookie, I got a candy bar and then ate it at my desk. And then the day after that, I went up to the cafeteria again, but I didn't buy anything. Instead, I just talked to friends for about 10 minutes. You get the idea. What I was trying to do was test different hypotheses to figure out what reward I was actually craving. And what I figured out pretty quickly was it had nothing to do with cookies. It had to do with socializing. Nowadays what happens is, at about 3:30 in the afternoon, I absentmindedly stand up, I look around the office, I see a friend, I'll walk over and we'll gossip for 10 minutes, and then I'll go back to my desk. The urge to go get a cookie has completely disappeared. The new behavior has become a habit, and I've lost about 12 pounds as a result. Studies have shown that if you can diagnose your habits, you can change them in whichever way you want. So what are the cues, routines, and rewards in your life? What habit do you want to change?
Pretty powerful.
The power of habit. Why we do what we do in life and business. Learn more at thepowerofhabit.com.
Pretty powerful, huh? Yep. So that is our modern kind of competition. But the other thing, too, is if you go and read these books and then really delve into their blogs, their support systems, the businesses that they've set up around this, you'll find that they've just kind of cherry-picked elements of behavior analysis. And they're top-level types of things. They don't teach adaptive sorts of behaviors. They don't really teach the level of thinking, analysis, and the scientific structure that we have that underpins ours. So I think these folks were very smart in terms of taking what we have, but we can do better, right? They showed us the way almost in terms of how to do this and how to make it fun and how to make it story-oriented, personal. You know, if this guy can lose 12 pounds just by figuring out he would rather talk to people than have a cookie, gee, what could I do, right? So that's one of the things, is you kind of look at all these things, and what Grant was saying now in terms of the culture, they've matched themselves against the culture in terms of making it easy, accessible, fun, something I can do. I look at that and say, that's great. Versus if I look at antecedents, behaviors, and consequences, you know, right there we've got that barrier in terms of the scientific language. And we face it all the time in industry. You know, we just have to stick with them till you overcome it. Does this guy have to stick with us till we overcome his system? No, you're kind of drawn in. Okay, so let me show you the next things that we started looking at. So we stepped back from Grant's discussion, and then a group got together and said, what do we do? And the folks at Cambridge Center said, and ABBA, to a big extent, said, just go ahead and brainstorm. You know, figure out and come back and see, put some sort of structure together, and then we can go to the market, all of our markets, and say, does this resonate? So we have been doing that, a group of behavior analysts, saying what could we all own together that might be easy to describe to all of our various markets. You know, we're everywhere, and we're going to get bigger and bigger in healthcare if we are able to describe to people what it is that we do. So one of the things that we started with is we called in some more experts, and we holed up for about 3 or 4 days. And one of the things the expert said to us is, don't run from your past. Okay, hit it head on. If behavior modification or whatever it is that comes to people's minds when they first hear about you, address it, hit it head on. Don't try to hide it, don't try to sneak it in somewhere else. So we started talking about, okay, they went through and they said, tell us about your history. We said, well, behavior 1.0 is really experimental psychology. It's where all the basic, you know, laws of behavior were discovered in very controlled settings, mainly with animals, you know, and but a lot of the things were derived, and it evolved just like natural science would in the lab, and then moving to behavior 2.0, which would be to highly controlled settings, right? Applied settings. And so a lot of the stuff, I think, where we kind of got stalled is the work that happened in the 60s and 70s around applied behavior analysis. Is it became, you know, it became viewed as something that was only viable in highly controlled situations. Where in reality, it was just part of the way that science evolves, right? You have to do things in highly controlled settings. You have to try this and that. So actually, behavior 2.0 is something that is a gift because we were able to test a lot of the things and the principles held up. Fact is, it was so powerful that applied behavior analysts gathered together and said, you know what, if this is misapplied, this could be a problem. So for the first time ever, they developed a code of ethics around it, thinking that it would go in terms of much broader applications. We kind of got stuck there, I think, in the public perceptions in the 60s and 70s, because there's a whole number of factors. The marketing folks helped us understand that. Part of the thing is they said you didn't have a big spokesperson. You know, you didn't have somebody who's like that guy who was on the video. You had a whole bunch of people who were still committed to the science and just, you know, continuing to try to refine it, versus people who would be like a Carl Sagan, trying to take it more public and make it more popular. So we started and we said, you know what if we just framed that, acknowledged it, said behavior 1.0 and 2.0 was this, and this is how sciences naturally progress, and guess what, we had a gap, but behavior 3.0 is about all the updates that have happened to our science. And it includes all the contemporary types of things that we heard about. So one of the things that we did is we started talking about this popular eye behavior. Did you see that? I made that up, eye behavior. I think that's so funny. But anyway, it's all those books, right? It's all the stuff that is fast and user-friendly and available to us. The things that they taught us as we went into those. We had a team of folks read every single one of those books. We had them review all the database support for what they were trying to tell us. And if you're a behavior analyst, some of the things that they were pointing out in terms of research that supported their model, you go, oh my gosh, this is such a gross misinterpretation of the laws of behavior but nobody knows in their book. So we started to say, we've got such a solid foundation of a scientific framework. What if we kept all of that and then cherry-picked the things out of the eye behavior books that could really propel us forward? And so one of the things is they have, described human behavior in all of its complexity. We spent a half a day talking about, with the whole group of behavior analysts, you can imagine this, theorists, applied folks, experimental, debating, thoughts and feelings and where they fit and all those sorts of things. And we said, you know what, the average person isn't even going to really get that. Let's just talk about it as we can deal with human behavior in all its complexity. So our marketing guy kind of helped us. He said, stop, I don't want to hear anymore. I don't even know what you're talking about. But what you're saying is you can pretty much handle everything, beyond kids and beyond controlled settings. We can scale up ABA to achieve vital organizational and societal goals. If you look in the books, they take an individual science of individual behavior, and they show how it can scale. So they show about how there's a weird worm that's over in Africa that gets into the water supply and then infects a village. It's really severe. They show how you can take individual science of behavior and affect things like malaria, really big sort of global issues. And we don't often do that. We've got all the underpinnings to do it. So one of the things that they make sure they demonstrate is how you can scale that. And we've got to be able to scale it. And then makes it fun. So they've got the cool terms. You saw that. Short videos, reliable, kind spokespeople. These are people who live what we talk about. They're not up there saying, everybody should deliver more positive reinforcement. They're kind of demonstrating it, right? You'd like to have dinner with that guy. And he seems kind of nice. You want to have a cookie with him, maybe. Okay. Works even in situations where people have tremendous choice. People say, well, they can choose to do whatever they want to do. I mean, reinforcement isn't going to work because you can't manipulate them. They're going to make the choice. But you know what? We can impact and influence behaviors. That's how the book Influence came about. It's not that I'm reinforcing specific things. I'm trying to influence a general direction. We can handle all those types of things. Empowers people, helps people turbocharge all possible motivators. So moving past the cookie M&M type of thing, talking about all the possible motivators and how a single behavior often has multiple consequences. And the more you can bring to bear multiple levels of consequences, the more successful you're going to be in sustaining the behavior and sustaining the things that make you successful. And then the big thing is uses technology to capture what we're doing. So rather than just having a whole bunch of data coming out of that technology, we can bring to bear a lot around actionable data, actionable information. So some of these are aspirational. Many of them have been done. So we've scaled up things. For instance, we worked with one global airline to help 29,000 flight attendants do 4 behaviors that we knew would dramatically impact the repurchase decision for the top customers, who carried 85% of the revenues for the airline. So hone in on where you want to go, and then how are you going to get those 4 behaviors going globally once you know what they are. So we've done all those sorts of things in terms of scaling up. It's just a matter of figuring out, how do we get the reinforcement systems out there from a multitude of perspectives? How do we help people know when they're on or off in terms of the behaviors and what needs to be adjusted over time? So a lot of these things are very, very possible. One of the things that we did, and I'm going to hand that out in a minute. Let's see, where did we go? Who's got there you go, yep. we took a little stab at this. So, saying we're directionally on target. Started 2 years ago when we first put it out that we were going to work on this and wanted people to help. I was just overwhelmed. I became paralyzed, and I'm never paralyzed. I got such a blowback on this is ridiculous, this is a science, you can't change anything. I mean, it just went on, and I said, I've got a day job, and I don't have time to defend my dissertation again. So I actually went out and looked for a science writer, and there's a guy named, I've got him in the deck later. He had done a thing that was on the cover of Scientific American. I don't know if you saw it. It was around obesity, and then the old science of behavior, the evil science of behavior modification might be the only thing that can help. So, and I went and read it, and I called him, and I said, could you help us? Because I watched everything that he had to deal with on the blog as a follow-up to that, and it was incredible. And I thought, I could answer things, but it would be too technical. He was able to put it in a kind, engaging sort of way. Turns out he's a science writer, and it also turns out that his daughter is a behavior analyst working in autism, and that's the only reason he became interested in it, is because he couldn't understand what she did. So he's just a gift, and he's agreed to work with our team, because I find that every time I begin to go down this path, or all the people that I'm with, we slip back into that scientific, the thing we've been trained to do. So we pulled together something here, just a first stab at what Behavior 3.0 might look like that we could all use. We've talked about, we've done a lot of work on the branding so far, and this is our first pass. We've got about 20 other logos and different looks that we could use. So we're going to open it up to the behavioral community to ask which ones might resonate with your audience in terms of the look, the feel. For this one, we took behavior with the two kind of scientific brackets around it, indicating antecedents and consequences, and a little bit of formulaic type of thing that links it to the science if need be. And then one of the things that we're thinking is we'll collectively do this together, and we've talked even as far as if we publish something like this, that might be a brochure that you could hand out to people in your market for a quick understanding of what behavior analysis is, or Behavior 3.0. We could also collectively publish a book together. And we even went so far to say that the author could be an avatar. Okay? Because it's going to take all of us to do this. And we all need to own it and ultimately accept it. Because if we have clients all the time who would go to ABBA, they'd go to different places. They actually go back into the university sometimes. Some of them have what would be comparable to a master's degree. If we say something and then somebody else counteracts that or contradicts it in a significant way, who is a behavior analyst, is really kind of awkward, right? So whatever we do here, I think, if we can at least get 70% of the people saying, yeah, that's a good, noble thing to do, I'm still going to call it X in my business because antecedents in my business work, because I'm working with might be behavioral health care people in a pharma company, and they understand the science aspect of it. But it doesn't work over here, we call it cues, or over here we call it triggers. So, but if we can get the core down, I think that's really important. And then the other thing that I wanted to do is, let's see, Heather, where are we on time? Or we're just about right on, right? Okay. So what I want to do, this is the interactive portion of the agenda. What I want to do is hand out this brochure. It's got a lot of little glitches on it, and even a reviewer today called me and said, I like the first 2 pages, but after you set up, people can do it. The last page, then all of a sudden it's an expert has to help me. I don't like that. So it's little things like that we're not, our team wasn't used to catching. So this is the first pass at it. We're setting up the process, and I'm actually hiring somebody, Heather, because this has been too hard for me to keep up with. But we're hiring somebody to come in and kind of manage the online interaction among the behavioral community and do that. And today what I would like is, I would like you to meet in smaller groups, and maybe what we could do is, I can't see where the break is, maybe at this side of the room could look at answering question number 1. So for instance, should we call it something different? And does Behavior 3.0 hit you? in terms of trying to think through, how we can make this more contemporary and more inviting. What you want is something that people go, what's that? Or, oh, that must be something, a reboot of it or something like that. And then also, we had tagged on the science of personalized behavior change. In medicine right now, they're saying that the future belongs to the people who can do personalized medicine. And underpinning all of that is behavior change. They're talking about that. So personalized medicine, they know is the medical part of it, but the future is about behavior change. So they're beginning to talk about personalized behavior change, and that's why we kind of got in there. I'll give you just a real quick background. If you think about how do we improve outcomes, healthcare outcomes, which is so critical right now to our country in terms of competitiveness. I mean, it's almost 19% of our GDP for the country. It will take us down if we don't deal with it. Almost all of the costs are related to, could be avoided if we had more healthy behaviors. So if you look at the eras in terms of reducing healthcare costs and getting better health outcomes for the individual, from 1900 to about 1950, it was all about hygiene. So we learned how to, wash our hands and do things that made things much more antiseptic in hospitals. From the 50s until about 2000, it was drugs and medical devices. Okay? So those took costs down. Everybody thought that 2000 and beyond was going to be related to genomics, all biotechnology sorts of things. That hasn't panned out. There have been no new blockbuster drugs in the last 10 years. They've just been weird combinations of drugs. And now they're saying, oh, now we have to get serious about behavior change. And they're saying that's the next wave. Whoever can master that in an evidence-based approach, it's going to be required that you have evidence around changes in your cholesterol, all sorts of biometric trends. Whoever can master that and make behavior change easy for the individual, and they call it democratizing it, they're going to win the whole thing. And we need to be at that table, and we need to be able to do that in a way that describes our differentiating features. Okay. So this side, if you could take a look at behavior 3.0, maybe just in groups of 2 or 3, talk about that and say on target, off target. Think of your markets. Think of if you have to talk to your, not if you have to, but if you talk to your mom or dad, or if you talk to people that what would they understand that? Would that kind of intrigue them compared to how we describe it now? And then this side, if you could just talk about, should we start to use more user-friendly terms and models, like that cues, reactions, rewards? It's a little tricky because we still have to keep the science. We've got, all 80 years of published research. And so at some point you have to make that conversion, but I'm certain that we've all done that within our markets. We've got our core being ABA, and then we figured out a way to talk about it with our clients that isn't always as rigorous. So what should we do as maybe a group that could pull that together and describe it in a simple way for people that would draw them in? So I'm going to give you 5 minutes, okay? Let's go ahead and start over here on this side. I think we have handheld mic somewhere. Oh, great, okay. So if we take that first question, your reactions to, it's not just 3.0, but kind of calling it something different. So you can go as broadly as you want to in response to this. So does anybody want to go? Oh, there we go. Oh, hi.
So we talked about it a little bit. Can you hear me? Oh. So we talked about it a little bit. My first reaction to this, and I'm not sure it was shared by all my colleagues here, but I thought it looked like a textbook. And I thought, oh, that's cool. And then I put it on the side, So, and then we had some other things. Let's see, some people said put puppies on the front here.
The what?
Put puppies on the front. Put something, something that just grabs people.
Okay.
We also came to the conclusion that if we handed this to our grandmother, there would be a big problem. Like, even the words that were being used and the nature of the words and so forth. And I'm a professor, right? So I really enjoyed the selection of the words for their preciseness in some ways. But I almost feel like it should say something like, put the power of behavior change in your pocket. Because then you're like, oh, cool, this is gonna be mine. Like you were stressing, right? Make it individualized.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Okay, great.
I don't know, some of my other colleagues might want to say something. No? So I think it's a good first step.
Yeah, no, that's great. Did you have anything on the, oh, yeah?
So, I like the precise words that we use in behavior analysis, right? But that video really illuminated the point that we can't use our terminology with the lay people.
Yeah.
And my one point was I personally hate the term reward as a substitute for consequence. It has not the right connotation, and I can't exactly articulate what it is. And I don't think we should use consequence either because it has such a negative connotation. So if we found some better word than reward and consequence for it, then that might translate better to the general public.
Right, and you can see where 20 of us have struggled for the last year.
I don't have a solution.
No, we don't either. We're going to have to come up with it. So, okay.
Hi, I just had a general comment because I think like most of us, the precise language resonates with me. But I attended a behavior change and energy conference, a climate change conference a couple of months ago, and I was part of a handful of behavior analysts at the entire conference. And one of the things that was very interesting, there was a woman from Hollywood who hires writers to inform TV programs, movies about science, whether it's medicine and in this case climate change. I think the writer you were referring to is David Friedman.
It is.
And I think that we all have a very biased view looking at this, one way or the other, whether it's the struggle we've had to relay what we're about or the bias of really liking this language. And it seems to me like it would be great if you could find other audiences of people who maybe have not even needed a behavior analyst in their life, but might have the unbiased view of, well, maybe in the future,
That's right.
this is where I go if
Yep.
I need some help.
Okay, good. That's great. Anybody else?
Hi, I would just like to make a general comment. Our group was talking about the actual, like the metaphor of behavior 3.0. And I think I like the idea of having a salient metaphor for our current culture to kind of brand us, seems that's the point. However, the idea of going with a technology metaphor is problematic for me, and I think one, putting a 3.0 implies that there will be a 4.0 and that will soon be outdated. I also think that there was a point where that was like a trendy thing to do, is put the numbers afterwards, but you actually don't see that too much in technology or when you get software updates. So I guess we were discussing about having a metaphor, but maybe something more organic, looking at the evolution of behavior analysis or something about the new revolution of behavior analysis, something that's more or less of a technological thing, especially if we already have the stigma of being robotic and overly programmatic. We probably don't want to brand ourselves with something that is such. So that was
No, that's really good. There's a couple of business books. I think we might have been a little bit tainted. We had people well beyond the OBMers, helping. But there's several business books out that are marketing 2.0. They're kind of bestsellers. So yeah, but that's good. That's great. Okay. Did you have something? Oh, I'm sorry. There you go. Heather, you want to go?
We had a slightly different concern with the 3.0. We thought that would be great to put in the hands of someone who has heard of behavior analysis but is thinking in terms of sort of the BMOD misinterpretation of behavior analysis, but that if the person was brand new to behavior analysis, they might not understand what 3.0 refers to or why it's a 3.0.
Okay.
Um,
Did anybody talk about whether or not we should just break away from behavior analysis or keep it? Did you talk about that at all? No? Okay, I think that's the fundamental question. Is, yeah.
And
Okay.
the other thing that we thought could potentially happen, the science of personalized behavior change sounds very much the person level, and so if you take it to a CEO, would they think, oh, that's too small?
Mhm.
I need something that isn't about personalized behavior change for one, it
Great.
has to be transformative for the whole.
Yep, okay, that's good. That's great. Okay. Anybody else?
I don't know if we went too far into the abstract, but I know ABA's been repackaged so many times. I think we watered ourselves down with all the acronyms. So that was one thought regarding the rebranding to behavior 3.0. Almost a preference to want to stay with it and
Okay.
just change its overall, perception. The other part was, we haven't found, are we doubted whether or not trying to market what is really a very effortful process to people and society that really tends to go right towards the less ethical. I'd rather have my Big Mac and take my diet pill. I'll take my Diet Coke with that supersized meal. It's just too easy to do that. So I think part of the rebranding and understanding how we do that also needs to kind of encompass our challenge. That's one of the challenges, is how do we compete with that opposing established way of doing things. And then lastly, a thought was also that when we think of our family or grandparents, they're not turning to psychology, even traditional psychology, as a way to solve their problems.
Right.
They usually tend to go back with either cultural or religious things. So if we do get to repackage the idea, I think somehow we have to incorporate ourselves into what is established ways of doing that, so we can benefit your change, in line or together with your religious or cultural preferences.
Right, right. We've been asked to assist with a global diabetes initiative, and there are all sorts of cultural practices that vary around the world with respect to that, as well as belief systems. I mean, they're dramatic. I had no idea. So for instance, in Russia, it's common, doctors don't really trust pharma companies. So they automatically assume that what is being recommended in terms of a dosage should be cut in half. Okay. For some things, it doesn't matter. For others, it's really a bad problem. So blood pressure medicine, it's a really bad problem. You don't want doctors doing that. So it's going to be really interesting to kind of figure out, what are the cultural context of some of these things, and how do we quickly find that out and adapt the intervention to that culture, versus having something that fits everything. And then, let alone that, you've got to take it down to the individual level still. So, okay, this is good. So we're just trying to figure out, how do we move it forward, right? So, yeah. Rania?
Thank you. So I would like to speak to the idea of whether we should change the name of our field or not. I think about Chrysler didn't change its name, it changed its brand image. But I also know that there are companies and products that have changed, services that have changed their name because of a historically negative connotation. Amway doesn't call itself Amway anymore because they had 50 years of people thinking they were pyramid schemes. Behavior has 100 years of negative connotations, and much as we may be enamored of behavior, this is the word, and applied behavior analysis, I think all three of those terms have too much baggage. And I don't have a solution for what the next phase is, but I do support the idea of looking at more acceptable name for the field.
Yeah, okay, that's good. That's really what our marketing expert was saying. It's so pervasive in terms of the negativity. I mean, they went out and did searches, on the internet, the Google search, positive, negative, those types of things. It's extremely negative and it's across the board. So, but there's an aspect of it that you can't just jump to something else and say that, oh, okay, we're going to be like this guy. You've got to still talk about built on such a solid foundation. So we thought maybe part of that aspect would be, this is how other sciences evolve. So that a lot of the things that you heard about early on were purposely done in controlled settings with limited types of reinforcement systems, much more hierarchical type of approach to delivery, setup, all those types of things. And at the time, that was culturally okay, and we've evolved since then. And the fundamental principles still play out. So we could do it, who else but us could do it in the most sophisticated way possible. So, okay, are there other things?
Just to speak to creating user-friendly models and terms, I'm in the MA program at Columbia University for Organizational Social Psychology, and I'm actually doing a change practicum right now that's OD focused. And one of the things that the professor keeps kind of trying to get us to realize is that when you sit down and you client face for the first time, it's really a bit of a date. So if you sit there kind of with a checklist on your date and you say, how many partners have you had? How many times were you intimate? How long did those, are you going to want a second date with this person? And I think, we're so, as young professionals, we get so concerned with looking like the expert that we throw these kinds of terms at our clients that, make them feel a little bit stupid if they don't know what we're talking about. So I think when we have these conversations between ourselves, these kinds of expert terms are great. They help us, we love it. Not everyone outside of our science loves science. So when we're talking to our clients, we have to make sure that it's palatable for them and that when they get up from the meeting, they like us and they feel like they just sat down with a friend who's going to help them figure out how to solve their own problems. And I think that helping the idea of OD and helping our clients solve their own problems is really fitting well with our culture change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We have a culture of people who are very independent, who really want to take charge, they want to be autonomous. And that kind of doctor-patient prescriptive consultation method just isn't going to work anymore in our culture.
Yeah.
So I think training young people to kind of relax a little bit, as one of my professors has encouraged us to do, and kind of have fun with our client, make sure that our client's smiling and has had a good time, I think is a good way to kind of start changing the culture of consultation from the inside out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's key. One of the things that we talk about with our consultants is, it's not about you delivering the reinforcer or having somebody else do it. You are the reinforcer early on. You are. They're dependent upon you. They're helping, you're providing guidance, making it fun, making it such that they want to come back to you for help. And I'll never forget where I first started was at St. Cloud State, and I had a summer internship at Brainerd State Hospital. They had a massive grant where they were trying to see if we taught teachers behavioral principles, would the behaviors of the kids at this state hospital, institutionalized, would they change if the teachers were more knowledgeable about behavioral procedures? So I had to live on campus, which meant I lived in a state hospital for 3 months. And I would go in every day with my little clipboard, and it went for about a week. The grant was called, I think it was the asset program, okay? Well, pretty soon, every time I walk in, they go, the asset is here. So, and it was just horrific. Sometimes they wouldn't do anything. They'd sit in the corner. I mean, the teachers were really, really upset by this whole thing because they were being monitored and it wasn't clear, how everything all linked up. So finally, I went back and I said, I can't do this because it's, me versus them. And I said, so put me on 25% direct delivery so I know what their world's like. And I know what the challenges are. So I got bitten and punched and kicked, and I know how to take a kid to timeout. I know how to do all that. But it was the thing that was needed to get the data. You have to, enter their world and know what it's like. And so all the behavioral procedures that relationship aspect of it has to come across in the delivery. And it's interesting that you mentioned that. I don't have the. Let me see if I can get this going again. One of the things that Grant and then another marketing guy that we have for CLG is they told us, this is just a start. So getting this down will be an effort. But then you have to live the brand. You can't just talk about it, right? And that living the brand is exactly what you're talking about. That we are the folks who, we demonstrate and live it. And so 2 years ago when we kind of started those discussions, it was kind of like, ugh, it's beyond moving, to the objective data analysis and thinking about what do I do, to actually live that. It's funny, I ran our company for the first 4 years and then actually switched it with my business partner, Leslie Braxick, because I realized that I had grown beyond my interest and capability. It was truly the Peter principle for Julie Marie Smith. And so one of the things that caused me to step back is somebody said, you're so pinpointed and so specific about feedback that it doesn't leave me any wiggle room. You've got to leave wiggle room for the dignity for the other person. To talk about it, to say, I'm not sure, I didn't understand that or all that. And it was such an aha for me at that time because I've been trained to boom, 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 boom. So, and I wish I had, learned it a little bit earlier, but God bless the employees who actually told me that. And that's when I said, you are right. I need to chill out and take some time now. So, but one of the things that we talked about is what are the next steps? So we're talking about, continuing to refine this. It's going to be a struggle to figure out how we take everybody's input and figure out something that works. And then we're going to have a social network where people can test it across all their markets. The toughest thing for me to remember is this is not about us. And that's why this first draft, that was internal. You can see that. That's us. The next thing is what resonates with the market. We're going to turn that over at some point after we get the key features and characteristics. And then Grant is going to conduct in-depth cultural interviews with, he said he only thinks he needs 4 or 5 people who might be representative of the people in our market to see how it resonates. And then David has agreed that he'll help us either develop a short book or some articles or even help with this brochure type of thing, whatever we want. He'll help with that. And then the behavioral experts, let's see, that's not, CCBS, we're not sure yet where that's going to run through. That was Cambridge Center for Behavioral Studies, thinking that might be still viewed as kind of a compendium of behavior analysts who are not there for specific reasons, not experimental, not from their program's perspective, not from certification, things like that. They really come from all over. So we have to figure out what we're going to do with that. And then we also talked at the Cambridge Center that maybe we could fund little short videos that we could say, tell us the best and most fun way to convey to somebody, what shaping's all about. Or, really what this guy did, he did a functional analysis of his own behavior. Now, if you don't know that kind of model, it's hard to step back and apply it again. But he clearly demonstrated, functional analysis and the power of reinforcement. So one of the things that we're doing is we're going to, keep going until we can find something that is more acceptable. I have to tell you, I'm a little bit worried because these guys are really good at marketing. So I talked to, who's the guy who has food dudes over in Ireland? Who is it?
Fergus Lowe.
Yeah, Fergus Lowe, okay? So guess who's consulting to Cameron and the whole British government? They fly that BJ Foggs over once a month to consult about behavior. BJ Foggs is I think he's a newspaper guy. Okay, I know. So once you start to find out these things, they've established credibility very, very quickly. That is, if we wait too long, it's going to be hard to recover that. So one of the things that we have to do is kind of balance urgency and maybe just about right, maybe 70-80% right, with just not getting anything out there at all. So we're just going to continue to, move with it, knowing that the science itself is evolving. I think there's some really, really exciting things that are happening. I'm working with a company that does analytics, and what they're going to be able to do is to help us figure out the algorithms around behavior consequence connections at an individual level. And if you think of behavioral economics, being able to do that across wide swatches of the population around opt-in and all the different opt-out types of things that they've been able to do, we're going to take that down to the individual level. And we've got that diabetes program is one that we're going to be able to test it on and see what's happening. But I think that there's going to be all sorts of breakthroughs on the technical side. And I can tell you, I've been to every single major health insurance company in the country. Every single payer group, they all have behavior change groups within their departments. Not a single one so far has heard anything on behavior analysis. Not a single one. They don't even know what we're about and who we are. And they've got PhD psychologists, they've got all sorts of things. And if somebody does know what we are, they're not speaking up among those PhD psychologists. So we've got an uphill thing. I think there's a sense of urgency. And I appreciate your feedback today. We'll get the whole thing set up. We've got Kevin Munson is going to be helping us. I don't know if you know Kevin, but he's astute technologically, so he's going to be helping in terms of how to gather the feedback and what we do with it. So, Mom, I'm sorry, I'm still a little late, but we'll get it done. So, anything else? Any questions or thoughts? Yeah.
I think another area that's going to be really important to look at is a lot of the same problems people have in industry that alienate them from behavior analysis also will alienate young students, young psychology majors, and that line gets really blurred between science and packaging it because you can't teach it incorrectly or fluff it up. They have to know the core foundation of it, and I think that can be another tricky issue that the field can't continue if we don't have new young professionals coming in.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really big deal. And if people want jobs, we've got to help create that out there. And otherwise, they're not going to come into the programs. So, okay. Oh, there you go. Over here.
Well, it almost seems like if we're going to change it, we almost need to be thinking ahead to doing coursework in marketing our science. I mean, of how to talk to businesses and personal acquaintances and other people while still retaining the science ourselves. But we need to teach everybody how we should be talking about this. It just seems like you talked about maybe science not being a good thing. One of your consultants said science, but yet we have the science of personalized behavior change, and I kind of agreed with that gentleman back there. And my colleagues talking right here said in Sweden, behavior is a bad word. Mm-hmm. And maybe it should be something totally different, but yet retaining the title of our field ourselves internally, but yet we talk about maybe problem solving, because we can solve any problem. You know what I mean? Rather than putting behavior on there.
Yeah, that's good.
Thanks. I just had a thought. I'm not sure if I'm thinking it, if I've thought it 100% ready yet. But I think maybe we should let our clients write this, write our brand using user stories. Would they put behavior on the top of it, or would they put something else on the top of this?
Right.
How would they brand us? If we look to like software companies, they use user stories in order to develop their products and develop how the products are branded. Maybe we should look that way and ask your client, please, we pay you.
I was working with Phil Chase. Behavior is accepted in business and industry. I don't know if you found that, but it's very accepted because of these guys. I think some early work that we did helped lay the groundwork. So we've got McKinsey and all sorts of people stealing ABC decks and saying we do that too. So for our audience, it is. Where I thought it really would be autism, and Phil said it's not. A lot of the practitioners, talked about that at the Cambridge Center and said parents don't want to think that their child has a behavior problem, they have autism, and that's different. And so they're not a behavioral problem, they've got, this underlying thing. And so it's just really interesting. He said they get upset when they come to the site. He'd get things that were left and things, on the site. So I think it's going to be hard to figure out something that fits across all of our markets. Mm-hmm. And then you had one back there, right?
I just wanted to say that I really appreciate this discussion because I had the same problem. I never can explain to people what I work with. So even if it's a tough thing to solve, I really enjoy the process and being in this discussion and that you're continuing this work.
Thank you.
2 years later, so thank you for that.
There you go, thanks. I don't want to hide anymore what we do.
I just had a thought to throw out. A lot of other communities have had words with a lot of negative connotations, and one that came to mind was the word queer. And the queer community did a large effort to reclaim that word and kind of make it their own. And so I wonder if we could do that with behavior. I think it'd be really hard to find another word that summarizes behavior analysis, so maybe part of our brand could be a reclaiming of it.
Okay, that's good.
It's just an idea.
Okay. Yep. Anybody else have other thoughts? Okay, well, it'd be really fun. One of the things you might want to do is download on your Kindle, iPad, or whatever, if you have one, the book Change Anything. Because in there, they've got embedded I think the company's called Vital Smarts. They've got the Vital Smarts Lab where they play out the principles. So you just, click on it, you get to see a short little video that talks about delayed reinforcement, basically. And the lab is little kids, where they get the cupcake and they're told, don't touch that, and if you don't touch it, you can have 2 of them in 20 minutes. And then you sit there and you watch the kids. But they do thing after thing after thing in that way to demonstrate it. But it just gives you an idea of what we might be able to do in kind of a neat way if we all work together to take core concepts and make it fun and show how it applies across all sorts of different populations, age groups, and then I think the really critical thing that we have to add on is the criticality of the suffering and the issues that happen if people don't have a way to deal with things. So you think about, I was thinking last night, there's 4.5 million dogs who are euthanized every year, right? And most of them, they're behavioral types of issues, and it's the behavior of the owners, right? But the thing that we need to do is kind of link those things, and this is a way to you have to figure out that emotional connection too, right? How do we do that? We can alleviate pain and suffering. Not just that we can help people be more successful, but we can really help, with some of the world's most significant problems. So I'm excited about where we're headed. I probably will be 90 when I'm up here, giving my final little, and then I think we kind of honed in on what behavior should be called. So wish me a faster speed than that. But anybody who wants to get involved, Heather, we've been kind of collecting, information off of some of the lists. So we'll do a push out to all of you to let you know how to get involved once Kevin's up on board. Okay, thank you.